Hello. This morning we are speaking with Carson, who is a metal worker in Philadelphia and is going to be participating in the Philadelphia Museum of Art Craft Show in November. Welcome, Carson.
Hi, how's it going?
Good. You want to tell us a little bit about how you got involved in your medium and a little bit about your background that got you to this point?
Yeah, sure. Just a first note, I'm working in a shared workspace, so you might hear some machines and maybe some hammering in the background. Yeah, that's kind of thing it happens around here. But a little bit about myself. I've been doing metalwork for about 10, 11 years. I first came to Philadelphia in 2006 for undergrad at the University of the Arts. I earned an industrial design degree, and while I was there, I found I really liked working in metal while I was doing it. So after college, I took a course at Haystack Mountain School, and then really just started building the studio and kind of doing it on my own. I'm largely self-taught, besides a couple of minor pushes to get me going in the right direction. I read books, watched videos, and learned through experience, which is really the best way to do it in this kind of medium. Like you don't know what the metal can do until you hit it with a hammer. You don't know what you want it to do until you hit it with a hammer enough that you can control what's going to happen when you hit it with a hammer. So that's kind of how I got into working with metal like this.
Mm-hmm. Can you tell us a little bit more about your process in particular? I mean, there's so many different, ways of working in metal. Tell us a little bit about what you do that's distinct for you.
Sure. So I am a metalsmith. I work in mainly copper and silver, and I focus on techniques like raising, which is making a volumetric form out of a flat sheet of copper or silver. I do chasing and repoussé, which is kind of a surface treatment to give depth and texture and shape to a surface. I do a lot of soldering and forging and hot work and cold work. Most of it is hammering. Hammering is a big aspect of what I do, either hammering a shape up into a form, stretching, forging, little taps with a hammer to smooth out a shape, all sorts of things like that.
And do you, does most of your work sort of your own design or custom and commission kind of work, or a mixture?
It's mostly just myself, kind of coming up with the designs in my head and going for it. Occasionally I'll get a commission, and then I'll work with a client to come up with a design that I am interested in making for them and they would be happy to have. But a lot of it is just speculative. I see something in my head and I start hammering away at it and seeing where it goes during the process. During a lot of my work, the design will change as I work on it, as the metal kind of tells me what it wants to do, and I get more ideas, because oftentimes I'll just have a vague idea of a form I want to make, and then I get to the form and it changes a little bit, and then I get to work on embellishing the surface and what colors and patinas and shapes I might want to chase into it. So it often evolves as I'm working on it.
That's cool. Do you have anything particular that you're working on right now that you can give us a sneak peek of, or any of your tools or anything that we can do our little behind the scenes in your studio here? That's, it's always so fun to see, when we see an artist at the show, it's nice to see where they're actually doing the work. So it's kind of fun.
So I'm here in my little studio space. Pretty much it all happens in this 12 by 12 little area in here. I've got all sorts of tools and things that I use. I thought I'd just take you on a quick little tour around my space. So
great.
Get the camera turned around. So starting off with, this is my polishing area. So I have a couple of polishing motors, and when I'm working with silver especially, I really want to get it up to a high shine, just that perfect mirror finish that silver can do. So these various buffing wheels and compounds that go onto the wheels are what allow me to get that super high shine on a piece of silver. Down here, this is my main metal forming bench. So you can see we have various stakes and stake holders. These metal pieces are called stakes. This is a mushroom stake, and you can see it just kind of fits down into these little pieces. I have various T stakes.
Mhm.
And then back here, you can see all sorts of different stakes and things I have. And these stakes are basically your library of shapes that you are able to form. When you're doing the kind of metalworking I'm doing, you need to have a piece that goes under it, and you need to be able to hammer it from the outside. And these shapes that go under it kind of determine what forms that you can hammer into the metal.
I see. Uh-huh.
So you gotta have all sorts of different interesting and funny shapes that will help you get inside the piece and really shape it exactly the way you want it.
Cool. Interesting.
Moving over here, this is my kind of working bench area. So this is where I sit and file or polish or scratch away at things. I have tons of different files. I've got all sorts of funny little tools and equipment that I've acquired over the years that really help me do the work that I need to do. Most importantly, books. These are the books that I read to really learn what it is that I do, because again, I wasn't learning from a craft school somewhere. I was basically doing the work all by myself.
Mhm.
Over here, this is my hot area. So I have a hood that I built, like a metal lined hood with an exhaust fan. And this is where I do my hot work. So annealing, which is a process of heating a piece of metal up to about 1200 degrees so it can be continued to work. As you hammer on a piece of metal, it gets work hardened, and you need to then anneal it to soften it back up again. And that's a continuous process. So you work it until it gets hardened, you anneal it, you repeat, you work it, you anneal it, you repeat. So it's a very labor intensive process. So I have there's a pumice pan, various torches, various gases. I have acetylene, propane, oxygen, all sorts of fun stuff. And so that lets me melt metal, that lets me solder metal, and annealing is the main things that happen in this area. Down here, I've got a nice heavy vise mounted to a nice thick stump, good and solid. That's what you need for hammering on stuff. This is my pickle pot, and so it's a mild acid that you dunk your metal in after you've annealed it, and it helps dissolve some of the oxidization that occurs when you heat it up. So you're constantly cleaning your metal in your pickle pot. Down here, you can see all the various hammers I have. And this is not even all of them, but there's all sorts of different sizes, shapes, materials. I've got plastic hammers, I've got wood hammers. Some of them I've made myself, some of them I've inherited from other people, but all sorts of different sizes and shapes that do different jobs as you're working on the metal. So this would be a raising hammer, a little mirror polished one. This is a planishing hammer, and that's for doing some final finish work. So it's very small for doing very light little tap, tap, taps on your metal. Something like this is a sinking hammer, and this is for driving the metal down into a hollow and trying to stretch it out from the inside. And all sorts of shapes and sizes and textures in between. Moving over here, you can see some of the pieces I have finished. I don't really have anything in process right now, but you can see some of the things I've been working on recently, and these will all be available at the PMA show this November. So I've got some copper pieces This is another copper piece. This is a sterling silver piece right here.
I'm sure that it varies, but what's sort of an average time that a piece would take you for sort of from start to finish?
Well, it definitely does vary
Yeah.
based on, how complicated I make it, what stage I'm starting at. Anywhere from maybe 50 hours to even 150 hours.
Mhm.
For instance, this silver piece was extremely long and labor intensive because I decided to do it the very long and hard way. So it's actually an interesting process. I started with old heirloom silver. So this is just mass produced stuff that I get for cheap. That's basically only worth its silver weight. It is sterling silver, but it's not really worth anything. Then I melt that down and I poured it out into an ingot. And this is a piece of copper, but it came out of the same ingot mold. So you can see it's a big, heavy, it's a little over a kilogram of silver. And then that shape I hammered and hammered and hammered out into this big bowl, then cast the legs separately,
Right.
and then solder them into place, chased some nice design details into it, and then you end up with a handmade piece of silver like that that is fully made out of recycled silver.
Hmm.
So, people that have that old heirloom silver that they don't know what to do with, it's just gathering dust in an attic somewhere. I can take silver like that, melt it down, give it a new life, and bring it up to a more contemporary shape or form that might be more interesting.
Does the older silver have a different quality to it, just in terms of the way it works, or the whatever, or it's just silver is silver, it doesn't matter?
It generally is pretty much the same. All this stuff was mass produced by the big companies like Gorham and Reed and Barton. So the silver itself is quite pure. There's not a lot of imperfections and weird stuff in it, just because it comes out of these big companies that really knew what they're doing in their process. So I can be reasonably certain if it's stamped Reed and Barton 925, then it's sterling silver, and I can melt it down and get what I need out of it.
Right.
So another process I do a lot is chasing, and that's when you take little tools like this. So these are all chasing punches, very small little shapes, and just tapping those with a hammer, you get to form metal into these kind of shapes.
It's beautiful.
So this is chased copper. What we do is take this copper and back it somehow with either a wax or a pitch, something that gives the material enough kind of backing behind it that you can then hammer on it and it's not going to deform in places you don't. It's a really interesting process, and it's almost like drawing in metal, the way you're taking these little shapes, working into the corners and just kind of going all the way around it. Wax is nice. I have just buckets of sculptural wax. You actually pour that inside the piece, and then that allows you to hammer it on the outside without it deforming. And so you can get these really cool little details.
Right.
Very, very fine stuff. Then you melt it down, pour it out, and probably have to repeat that process a couple times.
Yeah, I can see why it would take so long, because each step has, it's not just the working of the metal, but it's what else goes into it as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's all very, very labor intensive, but I love doing it. So when I'm deep within my work, it's not a trial for me. It's a labor of love.
Great.
All right, so
that's
most
great.
studio.
Is there we're sort of winding down on our time a little bit, I think, but is there a new, I don't know, a new technique or a new product or something new that you're sort of grappling with right now that you're trying to, I'm sure you're always evolving, it sounds like, but is there something that you're kind of,
I'm always trying to learn something. I like to take on projects that allow me to kind of push myself. Like I didn't learn this chasing work until a couple of years ago when I did a piece with the PMA, the video that I produced with them that is now on display on the floor in the American Decorative Arts section.
Right.
That was kind of the first time I'd ever really done chasing. So you can't really tell, but I'm on camera learning what I'm doing. Like, yeah, I think I'll figure it out. And it worked really well. And I really enjoyed that process. So now I've incorporated that into a lot of my work. Something I want to do more of that I've just kind of dipped my toe in a little bit is engraving. So hand engraving, not with a machine or anything like that. You just have a little, just grab one. So these are gravers. So it's just a tiny, basically a tiny little chisel head with a very fine tip on it. And then holding that in your hand like this, you can push it into the metal and make a very, very fine little scratch and produce an engraving. It's a very specific and a very delicate art, and
Yeah.
just learning how to do it a little bit. But that's pretty cool. Pretty cool to be able to, again, basically draw into the metal, because it's it's a reductive process at that point. Whereas chasing with those little punches and hammers, you're just stretching and moving around the metal. You're not actually removing anything.
Right.
With these, you're actually carving pieces of metal out of it and doing little scoops and take little burrs off of it.
Very cool. Well, we will look forward to seeing, bring some of your tools to the show. It's always kind of fun to see too.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I
your
always
videos.
want to do live demos of some of the stuff I do, but I'm sure the person next to me wouldn't appreciate hammering away at a piece all day.
Right.
But,
well, we really appreciate this sneak peek today, and we will definitely look forward to seeing you in 6 weeks or so, seeing you at the show in November.
Yeah, can't wait.
So thank you very much, and we will see you then soon.
Yeah, thanks you for joining me in my little space here.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks.